Most students think you need an hour to practice to be effective, but what if I told you with just 15 minutes practicing very specific things, you can actually make more progress on your guitar than if you just spent an hour playing your guitar. And that is a big difference, practicing your guitar versus playing. I know many students who will play their guitar for an hour, but they really only practice for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. The reason is, we start practicing things and we start with some of those challenging things. We realize they're challenging and then we want to do something fun. And we practice songs and we play along to songs, and that's great because that's the fun part of why we're doing all this practice. I want you to play songs. But the first part of your practice routine should be very specific. And if you're someone who's busy like me, you may only have 10 or 15 minutes to practice, and that's perfectly fine. What I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to show you what to do when you only have 15 minutes to practice to make sure you're making progress every week and reaching your goals. So I call this the perfect practice routine, and it's something that I share with my students in my 7-level system. And what we're going to do is we're going to break our practice down into the 3 fundamentals of learning guitar. Okay, I teach the 3 fundamentals for playing songs. All right, number 1, we got to get our fingers moving. We need to work on finger dexterity, because if we don't have good finger dexterity, we can't change fast enough between our chords. All right, and our hands are slow. And then that brings us to number 2, which is the chords themselves. We need to be learning chords, practicing them, but practicing them in a very specific way that helps us learn how to play songs. And then finally, we're going to work on strumming, rhythm, and timing. I'm going to show you a tool that I recommend my students use to make sure they're really getting good timing. Let's talk about our warm-up, all right? Our first 5 minutes we're going to spend using some kind of dexterity exercise, and I'm going to make a recommendation to you. Most people have one of these. It's a phone, and usually there's some sort of clock or stopwatch app. If you don't, you can just use a clock in your house. But something I find with a lot of students when they do a finger exercise like this is they think they're practicing it for longer than they are. Let me show you. So what happens is most people take a traditional spider exercise, so I'll use this one. I'm not going to explain the spider exercise, but if you want to grab my free crash course, I'll put a link in the description below that has this exercise. So it's a spider exercise, and it's just a finger dexterity exercise to warm up with to get your fingers moving, especially if you're an older learner that has arthritis. Warming up your fingers is key, okay? If you are someone that has arthritis, before you even do this, I would just take 30 seconds of your practice time doing this, kind of just opening and closing your hands. One, it starts getting the tendons to loosen up, and we're starting to get some blood into the fingers, and I would do it with both hands, okay? Even though I know you're using one hand for your fretting hand, do it with both hands. Do that for like 30 seconds. It'll just start getting some of the blood flow into the fingers, and then you start practicing this exercise. So you saw exactly what I did. I kind of went down this spider exercise, okay, and I'm going a little bit faster than most people probably are when they start. Okay, and you do it, and you're like, great, maybe I'll do it a second time, and you go all the way back down, and then you come back up, and you're like, great, okay, I practiced my spider exercise, let me move on. How long did that take me? I don't know, you have to watch the timestamps, but I'm guessing it was probably only 10 or 20 seconds, right? That wasn't 5 minutes. So that's the misunderstanding a lot of students have when they practice, is how long they should actually practice something. Now, what did I say? 5 minutes, okay? So I'm not gonna practice for 5 minutes. I'm gonna set a timer for 1 minute, just so you see how long 1 minute is. All right, so I set my phone for 1 minute. I'm gonna push play. I'm gonna go very slow with this spider exercise, and I'm gonna talk through it so that we just don't watch me practicing for a minute. All right, so I'm gonna push play, and what I would focus on, you don't have to go fast when you're practicing these finger exercises. The most important thing is to keep it relaxed. Okay, make sure you're breathing. I have a lot of students who play through this spider exercise and they go, and then by the time they get to the bottom, they go, and a big puff of air comes out. All right, so if you do not breathe while you're practicing this, you'll get tension, okay? So I'm just going nice and slow. I'm making sure that all my notes are sounding nice. Okay, I'm not working on speed here. Just going nice and slow, making sure I'm relaxed, playing through. We're still not a minute in. Okay, I've gone very slowly, so I'm just gonna start repeating that process again. Okay, maybe the first couple times I play through nice and slow, and the next couple times I'm gonna pick up the speed. Maybe my playing gets a little bit sloppy because I'm trying to go faster, right? Because our goal is we do want these fingers. There you go, that's a minute. All right, so going at that speed, I only went through about 1.5 times. Now, if I was playing faster, I could probably go through it a little bit faster. I know I was talking through the minute, but did it seem like a long time? It is. When you actually time yourself, now that was just 1 minute. I want you to do it 5 times as long. We're gonna do 5 minutes. So in 1 minute, I went through this 1.5 times. If I did that 5 times through, you're probably gonna go up and down maybe 7 or 8 times, okay? If you did it at that speed. That's a lot more than just going up and down a couple times, all right? And again, you heard me talking through the process. I'm working on very specific things here. I'm working on relaxing, okay? Speed comes from relaxation, okay? So if you're someone who's just starting this type of exercise and you see your fingers flying off like that, slow it down, go nice and slow, breathe through it, and don't put the next finger down until your hand relaxes, okay? And this might be how slow you need to go. And that's okay. And maybe if you go that slow, you only get through it a couple times. That's perfectly fine. But your practice is focusing on something specific. You're focusing on relaxation, okay? Then maybe you switch your focus to making sure all the notes sound good. So maybe you're playing relaxed, but you're getting this, you know, and that's okay. You don't want to focus on fixing too many things at once. So if you're going to do it the first time through, I'm going to work on relaxing. Maybe the second time through, okay, I'm not going to focus so much on relaxing. I'm going to try and stay relaxed, but I'm going to try and make sure that all my notes sound good. Okay, maybe you get the first 3 good and then you put that pinky down and it does this. Don't go back, fix it, make it sound good, and then keep working, okay? So there's 5 minutes of very specific practice. You're working on a finger dexterity exercise. We're trying to relax the hand because, like I said, speed comes from relaxation and experience, which is why I want to do it for 5 minutes. I want you to get enough reps in that you can start building some muscle memory into this exercise. Once those 5 minutes are done, the timer goes off, you move on to your next 5-minute session. So now you got 5 minutes to work on chords. And maybe you're someone that's in my 7-level system and you've learned the easy chords, all right? We've learned E minor, we've learned C, we've learned E minor and G, okay? And the goal is to start working on speed, getting between these chords so much faster, okay? So what I would do, I've got a few chord changes here. I've got E minor to C, I've got E minor to G, and then I've got G to C, okay? So I've got 3 different chord changes. I only got 5 minutes to practice. So what I would do in this section is I would pick 2 chords. I'd probably pick E minor and C, E minor and G. And then I'm going to make a note of that on my practice session because I want to make sure the next time I go through that I start with G and C. And what I want you to do, I want you to practice these chord changes for 2.5 minutes, okay? That's going to seem like a long time, but here's actually a suggestion I'll make for you. I'll give you practice 2 minutes going E minor to C, and then 2 minutes E minor to G, and then at the very end, that last minute, I want you to go E minor to C, E minor to G, to E minor, to C, to E. Now you're practicing all 3 of the chords together. So that's a great way to break up 5 minutes. So we're doing E minor to G, E minor C, and then that last minute, you're kind of combining them together. So you get 5 good minutes. And notice I'm not practicing a ton of chords. Keeping it simple, just working on a couple chord pairs. I got 3 chords, and then eventually, you know, we'll add in the easy D chord into the mix as well. And again, just pick a couple pairs and then practice working through them. Then you get to the next practice session. If you have the D chord in the mix, maybe you're going to practice D to E minor and D to G, okay? So you mix up your practice sessions so that you're hitting these chords and getting them to go faster. Again, there's 2 ways to practice chords in these sessions. You choose which way you're going to do it. So there's slow, comfortable, and clean. So we can go nice and slow and make sure our hand is relaxed, okay? Again, we're working on relaxing the hand. That's one way to do it. The other way is to go as fast as we can and the chords might fall apart a little bit, meaning we might get some muting. You might start hearing this when you're strumming. That is okay, especially if you're a beginner. Practice does not make perfect. Practice makes progress. You are a beginner. I promise you nothing is going to be perfect in the beginning. Now, I do want you to practice the chords correctly, meaning if you play an E minor chord and your fingers are like this, don't strum, because that's not the E minor chord. I want you to play the right chord. But understand that as you try to get faster, you have to sacrifice something to do that. So usually when we try to push ourselves to go faster, we have to sacrifice the clarity of the chords, and that's totally fine, totally normal, especially if you're a beginner. It can take 3 to 6, sometimes even 9 months for those chords to start sounding good. There's so many things mechanically you need to work on. So understand, especially for beginners, practice does not make perfect. Practice makes progress. So you're going to practice nice and slow for relaxation, or you're going to practice really fast to try and push that speed so that your chord changes can get faster and faster and faster. And understand that by doing that, it might make the chords sound a little bit clunky at times, but understand you can always slow things down again. And eventually, clean and fast, they're going to meet together somewhere in the middle, and eventually you'll be able to play chords fast and clean. Now, before I get into the final part of your session, which is going to be your timing and your rhythm, I want to introduce a tool that I find is an absolute must-have for my students. It is an app called Metronome Beats. You can get it on Android, you can get it on an iPhone, and all it is it's a click track. And when you would sit down to practice, you would write down your starting point. So for a lot of students, when they start practicing the guitar, their chord changes are maybe only 20 beats per minute, 30 beats per minute, and they work their way up. So I have this set to 60 beats per minute, which is 1 second on a clock, okay? And when you click, you hear that click coming through, you would change chords on the click. So if you're working on speed, and this will also help you with timing, we're gonna change chords on that click. So if I use the E minor to C, it would sound like this. Ready, and so I would do this for 2 minutes straight. And that's going to seem like a very long time, but it is so worth it. That's what you have to do. It's not 30 seconds, it's 2 minutes, okay? That right there was probably about 30 seconds or so, probably not even 30 seconds. You guys can check the timestamp on it. Maybe Mark will put it up on the screen here, my editor, but it's not as long as you think it is. And that's why I say you have to time it. And then you're like, great, 60 feels really comfortable. I feel good. Now I'm gonna bump it up to 65. And it's the same process again. Okay, now I'm at 65. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, back to that. 1 strum per click. And you're like, great, that feels great. Now I'm gonna bump it up to 70. 2, ready, and. Okay, and you're like, oh, this also feels great. Awesome, I'm making a lot of progress here. And then you go up to 75, and all of a sudden it sounds like this. So what you've now done is you have figured out your maximum possible speed before it falls apart, all right? So at 70, you're still doing okay. It's coming out clean and sounding good. But when you get to 75, it starts falling apart. So you're going to write down 70 to 75. That's your speed range right now for these chords. And the goal is to keep pushing this week to week. And this is very important because you can see there's a number. So when you write this number down and you see that going up week to week to week, you're going to start feeling motivated because you're going to see your progress. A lot of students, they get frustrated because they're like, I don't know if I'm getting any better. If you use that metronome and you write that number down, you're going to see that you're getting better, and that's super motivating. So how can we use this metronome to help us with strumming? I told you I was going to teach you how to work on your timing, and that's our last session. Our last session is strumming. Now in my 7-level system, I give you different levels have different strumming patterns, but right now what we're going to do to keep things similar, we're just going to use what I call a quarter note strumming pattern. It's going to be 4 down strums per chord. Okay, right now we're going to start by just working on the strumming pattern. So we're not going to switch chords. All right, and we'll start with that E minor chord. So I put it back to 60 beats per minute. Okay, nice and slow. Or we'll do 70 since that's where you were at. Okay, so we were at 70 beats per minute comfortable. This is what we're going to do. So I'm going to take E minor, and I'm just going to sit and make sure I get the strumming pattern first. So it's going to be E minor. 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? And I'm just going to sit here with this metronome clicking in the background. And I'm going to do that maybe for 1 or 2 minutes. If you feel really comfortable with the strumming pattern, probably a minute's going to be fine. Okay? And you're going to practice that for a minute, and you're like, great, that feels good. So now what we're going to do, we're going to change between chords. Okay? Remember earlier I gave you that E minor C, E minor G. You got a little chord progression. So it's almost like playing a song now. Okay? So we're going to do that. We're going to take the strumming pattern, and now we're going to put a chord progression over it. I'm going to use my click track. Every 4 clicks, I'm going to switch a chord. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 to C. 1, 2, 3. Back to E minor. 1, 2, 3, 4. Back to G. E minor. To C. To E minor. Back to G. So see, you can use chords and chord progressions with your strumming patterns to already have it start sounding a little bit more musical. That's the unfortunate thing with a click track, is it is very robotic. It's very mechanical. I know some students who prefer to play along with a drum track, and you can do that too. You can look up drum tracks on YouTube. You can put drum track 60 beats per minute, or you can find a country drum track 70 beats per minute. And you can play along with that. Some students find it easier to play along with something that's musical, drums, versus just a click on a metronome. But you can see how this tool helps you really line up your timing. When you go into a recording studio, which I've done many times, a lot of times as the musician, what I would do is I would play to a click track because you want your recording to be consistent. Now, when you play music live, it can sometimes go faster, slower, whatever. But when you're recording a song, you want to try and keep it at a level speed. So we play along to a click track. So it's a very important skill to get, because I have a click track in my ear, I'm playing my song, and then all my other band members now play over this track that I've recorded, which we will then re-record in the final product. So if you guys are looking for a very good strumming routine to practice along to, go check out my strumming workout right over there, where you can practice along with me and work on your strumming and your timing.